All right, we're here with the ProQuest champion. Why don't you tell us who you are, what you did?
My name is Nick. I'm on Team ACG, and I won a ProQuest in Central Florida over the weekend.
Yeah, who'd you win it with?
I won with Dorinthea Ironsong, and I got to win this.
Let's go.
Sick Coat of Frost.
Coat of Frost. You know, at least a grade 9+ guaranteed.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna break this card. Just you watch.
Oh yeah, it's coming.
Can't wait.
All right, any shout outs before we get started in the deck list?
Shout out to teammates, AJ, Alex, Evan, Ryan, just everyone who will test with me and help me land on this deck. Shout out to James for being a Dory stan and convincing me on the deck, and thanks to my mom.
Oh, awesome. That's great. I love it. All right.
And my great girlfriend.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so we're gonna jump right into it. We're gonna get right into the deck list. The deck list will be posted in the description. So you have the picture here, the full thing minus sideboard, but we're gonna get right into it. So first we're gonna start with kind of like what I saw was like the starter cards. So let's kind of just go right down the list.
Yeah.
I see Spoils of War. We'll start there.
So Spoils, really good card. After Crew, it was like the card I feel like that kind of almost broke Dorinthea in that format. It's just like a guaranteed go again card on top of what's that card? Twining Blade. It's really strong. So it's one less damage than something like Valor, but having guaranteed go again, not requiring a hit, is like super strong. And it's just like one of the staple starters that makes it really hard to play around. So really like the card, especially with Twining Blade. It's just like a house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Delivery for some other warrior stuff.
So on to Steelblade Supremacy.
Supremacy is usually the best card in the deck, especially in like the aggro matchups. If you can do like Glistening Supremacy or Supremacy Valor, Supremacy Spoils, like it's so hard to try to block it, especially if you're holding a card. Like when you crack Courage and play this, usually that turn is probably going to be insane and usually hard to stop. So drawing a card and +2 every swing is really strong.
Awesome. All right, and Glistening?
Glistening, so this is a card that I feel like some people are like, the card's actually not good, and they like cut it from their Dory decks. When I first started playing with this deck, because like I played the deck a lot in Crew format, and then like Monarch format, the deck is like not good anymore because of Prism. And so when I picked up the deck again, kind of after Dynasty Uprising, I added these into the deck, and I was just like, maybe it is not as good as like I thought it was. But the card's actually insane. This card against aggro usually will guarantee you like 3 counters in a turn, maybe 4 counters in one turn. And if you're able to get that many counters in a turn, like I think you just win the game at that point.
Yep.
Even like 3 counters in a turn, like you're swinging 1 for 6 every turn after that, it almost probably wins you the game. I think this card, you can't just like when you see it play it.
Right.
I think this is like an arsenal card.
You need to set it up.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely a setup card.
It's almost like a combo card.
Yeah, this is definitely a combo card. Like these cards together are absolutely nuts. Again, guaranteed go again, like on Spoils, is like super strong. 20 Blade can blow out people who are trying to just completely overblock it out. And this card actually, with the card I'm playing in my sideboard, Ironsong Determination, is one of the best plays you can do in the deck. So, card's really good.
All right. On Warriors Valor?
Warriors Valor, this was a card that after all of like the new reactions and like new cards we got, I was like, maybe I just cut this, because at first I was playing 3 hit and run. I'll explain why it's at 1 now. But I put it back in, and Valor is just, so if you have a 2-card
hand, like the highest rate, right?
Yeah. Like on a 2-card hand, you can go Valor, swing for 6, maybe more if you have a counter. If it hits go again, you have 1 floating, and swing for 3 if it hits get a counter. That's off 2 cards, 9 damage, possibly 10 if you get the counter. And the counter is actually worth more than just a damage, because next turn it's just going to be there and they have to try to clear it. So this is like an absolutely insane thing. Using 2 cards for essentially 10 damage is not something, not something that should be allowed. So yeah, this card's insane. It's really good.
And the Singleton hit and run.
So as I was working on the sideboard and like stuff to add and cut, as I was like reconfiguring, especially after adding like new cards, which we'll talk about from the last set, hit and run was actually at a 3 of, because one of the strongest things you can do in this deck is a triple hit turn. And so this enables the triple hit like very easily. You do like Valor, swing, hit and run, swing again, Twining Blade it, and then you have like a triple hit, which is wild.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah. But this set as a 3 of, you don't want to open it really. Like playing it before your first swing doesn't feel super good. Like you used a card that could be way better if you just had held it or waited, arsenaled it. So I don't think it's good as a 3 of. I didn't want to cut it completely. And as a 1 of, I've actually seen it where I'll have it in my hand and I'll be like, okay, this will be my arsenal card. This will be what I try to do the triple hit with.
Yeah.
Or I just draw it when I already have something good like glistening or supremacy and arsenal. And this is just, I know I'm going to do triple hit. So this, I had a turn in the finals, I think, or in the top 8 of the ProQuest that I won, where I went swing with go again. Oh no, swing without go again. I had 3 counters. Cracked boots, hit and run, swing again for 9. If it hits, I'll get another counter.
Yeah. Have you ever used it to buff an attack that wasn't the weapon?
I haven't yet. That is definitely another reason I was playing. I was like, if they block out the sword, you can do this into something like CNC or like some of these other cards, but that usually doesn't come up. This is like not a super block heavy format. So into a lot of decks, like they're just not gonna block your sword swing, your initial sword swing. So you usually get to attack again.
Okay. Onto the reactions. I noticed this deck's running way more reactions than Dory used to.
Yeah.
So we'll start at the top.
Iron Song response. We were talking, this is either the worst card in the deck or the best card in the deck. I was actually considering having this in the sideboard. But it's always good. Sometimes you have it in Arsenal, and Crown actually helps with this, Crown of Providence, where like you'll Arsenal it early and think it's going to come up and it doesn't. So you can just clear it. But once your opponent sees a turn, like even in aggro deck, if they see like a glistening turn, they might try to stop that, or a supremacy turn. So just having a free +3 on a turn that you know they're going to try to do something about, really strong. Free +3 is just insane. And like at the end of the game when you can singing and get this for the win or something, it's,
yeah, especially being free.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you don't have any resources and you have 1 card, but like if you have the Iron Song response, I guess you have it. And it's like, yes, I do. And then you
like, I technically have it.
Yes.
I technically don't have it. All right, so Stroke of Foresight, just a staple, really. I feel like it's been in Dory forever.
Yeah, we can talk about both these. Alpha Blood and Stroke, I feel like, are just like...
kind of 1 for 3s.
With like decent effects. I would say Alpha Blood is the better of the 2 effects, but Stroke actually does come up. Because sometimes you do have like that red hand and you're like, if I just have a blue, I can do a lot more on this turn. So this like digging for a blue or digging for a better arsenal is like actually very strong. I had one turn where in the top 8 I went first and I swung for 3. My hand was a blue, double stroke, and spoils. So he blocks for 3. I was like, oh, okay, so I get 6 free damage here.
Yeah.
So I play the first one, and I draw a Valor. And I was like, oh, I'd rather have Valor against aggro than spoils. So I put spoils at the bottom. I play the next one, and I draw Twinning Blade, and I was like, I don't want Twinning Blade this early, put it at the bottom. So I got to filter my draws for the next impactful turn. Arsenal, one of the best cards in the deck in Valor, and get 6 free damage on the first turn. So yeah, both these cards, this one giving a +1 on your next sword swing. If you're playing Tunic, you can off 1 card do Valor, swing, out for blood it if they try to block it, and then your next swing is for 4, which is a break point, so it's hard to block. So this card's also just really, really good.
That's awesome. New card, a couple new cards, Punctures and Run-Throughs.
Puncture is unfair. This card is out.
So what does Puncture do?
So Puncture is a 1 for 3, so it's same rate as these.
Yep.
It does not have Reprise. It just says if they block with any amount of armor, your sword gets piercing 1, which essentially just gives it +1.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of play against Dory, especially in the past, was like if you have armor, you can, with a combination of cards and armor or just with armor, get around a swing. Like, you know, you're doing enough playing around Reprise and all of that. Now Puncture, like getting over for +1 to get a counter or to keep your counters is so insane because they've committed cards or armor that are like finite resources.
Right.
So to be able to get over for 1 for the same resource cost as anything else is really insane. Like you can also singing this card to get over for, sometimes they'll be like, oh, I'm playing around singing in a +3. Well, you're not playing over a +5. So yeah,
absolutely.
This card has been way better than I thought it was going to be. At first I had it as a 1 of to search, a 2 of, and I was like, no.
This just kept going up.
Yeah, I was like, this is a 3 of.
More. Run Through.
Run Through. So this is a card that a lot of people have at like 1 or 2 in Dory decks. There's a couple of reasons I love it. It gives you essentially another Glant, like Glant being one of the best cards in the deck because it replaces itself, but giving you a buff on your next sword swing is actually really important because if the first one's going to hit, you're going to get probably a counter when the next one's buffed because it's harder to block. And I mentioned this to you too, but like one of your hard matchups is Dromai, and this card into Dromai is actually insane because that matchup's pretty awful. But you can use run through, so swing. There's still a reaction step when you attack an ally, so you can kill an ally, keep whatever counters you have, get go again with run through, and then swing at the hero for at least 5 or more, and then risk getting another counter. And you're already going to keep your counter, so they're less incentivized to try to block it. So you're still getting damage against the hero and clearing stuff, which is hard to do usually. Like that play with a Glint is actually pretty bad because you're like wasting a card just for go again. This at least is like damage and a potential another counter too. That's
I love it.
Yeah,
great. And singing, what do we gotta say about singing, man? Just fetches any one of these cards.
Singing is so good. Like singing, being able to get any one of these cards, also some other cards that we have, like Twinning Blades. This card is absolutely insane. Like sometimes it doesn't feel amazing. I've definitely played it for just the +1 buff because it's like in Arsenal, I'm gonna draw an Arsenal from Steel Blade anyways. They didn't block from hand. Might as well just use it for the +1. But like honestly, even that's fine. It also blocks for 3. A yellow pitch isn't terrible a lot of the time. Like the card just is insane, and it's a really hard breakpoint to get around. Like doing 1 for a +4, +1, +3, and then +1 on your next swing, or just for a free +3, which comes up a lot. The card is so good.
Glint.
Glint, just an insane
One of the
card.
best blues in the game.
The fact that it's a blue 3 block that also is like replaces itself usually and gives you go again. Like singing for Glant is pretty wild. Usually you can get over by +1, give a go again, and draw a card. It's such an insanely good blue.
So did you say, do any of these cards, I know this is kind of your main board before we get to the other stuff, do any of these cards get sided out, or this is like core, you run this in every deck, every matchup?
Yeah, I haven't found a reason to take any of these cards out. Like I could see doing run through down from 3 to 2, and then the third one's like for Dromai, but I do like having Dory if you have hands that like maybe your opponent forced you to keep a full hand, or you just have a full hand and you want to go off. Like if you don't have a go again card, the hand is probably not great.
Okay.
So I think like even having a lot of go again cards is like really strong. So yeah, I like all of these cards.
Okay, and then to some of the other stuff. So like we have the 3 Command and Conquers. You know, we have white border cards and Command and Conquers all over the place. Yep. 3 Command and Conquer. This is your only, well, you're actually running a couple attacks, but you're only red attack, I think, in the deck. So what made you want to run Command and Conquer? Just a tempo card? Or?
Yeah, so I've built Dory a lot of different ways where I've tried like Coax a Commotion, I've tried Snatches. Like you essentially want to play attack actions that punish your opponent for overblocking your first attack. So when you like spoil swing and they're like, oh, I'm going to block 9 here, get over that. It's like, well, I have guaranteed go again. So it's fine if my first one doesn't hit. And now since you use 3 cards from hand, you can't block a CNC and I'm going to get your Arsenal, or I'm going to get damage here. So this card is like the most punishing attack that you can do when they've given up cards to try to block out your sword. It's also a 2 cost, which is great. We play Epots, which we'll get to. So sometimes you can just do a free CNC. And it also is a popper against Dromai, which comes up very often. And sometimes you just have a 2-card hand and you just swing CNC, and that helps you like dig some tempo back against aggro, against Guardians. This can also help you dig some tempo back too on a 2-card hand. So yeah, as I don't really want to have room for a lot of attacks, I want the sword to be the thing that's gaining me advantage. So with the room that's in the deck, I think CNC is the right pick.
We'll just run through the blues kind of real quick. I mean, most of this is just going to be because it's blue.
Yep.
But why these blues?
Sure. Overpower. Your blues, like in Dory, you really want like 3 reds and a blue typically as a hand, or like 2 reds, a yellow, and a blue. So a lot of these cards you're going to see late game if we get there. Overpower is something that like at least you have a pretty good reaction late game when you're drawing a lot of blues. As a +4 is good. You can sometimes singing for the Overpower if like your deck doesn't have any good reactions left. This is at least a +4. We talked about this too, but like I don't think Dory has many good blues. Like outside of Glant, her blues are pretty bad. Overpower is one of the like pretty okay ones. These 2 are actually pretty good. Sometimes I'll actually play these like pretty frequently if I have multiple blue hand. This is usually for the opener. Like I didn't happen to draw a Valor or a Spoils, but I want go again. So hit and run is a good opener. Playing it after your like first swing +1 doesn't matter usually. So this card is a really good blue in that it's a 3 block, and sometimes it's actually a good playable. Like sometimes you'll draw your Arsenal of Supremacy, and it happened to me in the finals where it was a hit and run, and I was like, Actually, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Like, guaranteed go again next turn is solid. Precision Press essentially just replaces Blue Valor. Blue Valor used to be played in the deck because it's a break point, and if you get go again, that's great. This giving you guaranteed go again is really strong for the same cost. Piercing 1 does come up, where like they want to use armor to stop something, and then this incentivizes them not to. So it's just like a better Blue Valor, I think.
Okay. Epot.
Yeah. Epots, it is a pretty ice heavy meta. I think even after like the recent ban list, I still think ice is going to be a thing. Lexi is still good, Icelander is still good, Oldham is still good. So these hedge against that, but also like it's just a similar reason to playing CNCs is when they like overblock your swing when you have go again. It happened in a top 8 that I played at another ProQuest here at the Haven actually, where I had a 3-card hand. It was a blue and a spoils and energy potion. So I used spoils, swung my sword. If they overblock it, I lose my counters, but I still have go again. So I can at least like hold the Epot and play it. This is also really good when like you're playing against an aggro matchup. Dory blocks super well. Everything blocks for like 3. You can block for 9 and play Epot and just pass over to them.
Yeah.
And having Epot late game or at any point in the game is actually insane in this deck because you're at any point threatening like singing, get response, and swing again.
Yeah.
So Epot is, I actually used this in the finals that I won. I had a yellow in hand, and I think my hand was Twinning Blade and Valor. And so I paid for Valor and Sword Swing with the yellow, but I had Epot and I had an Arsenal. And so like playing around that is super hard when there's just 2 floating always. So yeah, Epot has been really good. That's why it's just main deck. First I thought it was just going to be a sideboard for ice, but I love playing this card, and sometimes just a pitch card, which is also fine.
It's great. All right, so I pulled out some other cards that are interesting choices. I just wanted you to talk through them. So let's go straight up from the top, go down.
Sure. Last ditch effort. Like I mentioned, I think all blue Dory cards are pretty terrible. Like a lot of decks will play like blue response, blue out for blood. I just don't think you ever want to play those cards. They don't have that much utility in my opinion. Like you're either blocking with them or pitching them. So I at least want cards that when I pitch them, they're going to give me utility possibly. I used to play Dory in some skirmishes, and I've actually won games in Blitz because of this card. In that format, it definitely makes a lot more sense to play this. Because fatigue is going to happen more often. But there are some decks like Dromai, like Guardians, even sometimes like Dash, where they'll try to fatigue you. So Last Ditch Ever, just like, not only do you have a weapon, so decks like Dromai that are trying to fatigue you and they don't have a weapon, you have that advantage, but then you have, if you're able to at least keep 1, 2, or all 3 of these, like you just have 8 go again into a sword swing, which is so hard for an opponent to do anything about. So it's a 3 block, and it has some potential utility against being fatigued. So
Pursuit of Knowledge, the old Nick special.
So Pursuit of Knowledge isn't here for a couple of reasons. One, I love this card.
Yeah.
This is like one of my favorite cards in the game. It's not amazing. Like you don't ever want to just do this only on your turn and that's it. But it has come up. Like it's come up where same reasoning for like Epots and CNCs is sometimes they'll overblock your sword, and you have this and you still have the 2, so you can just swing a Pursuit at them, and they gave up enough cards to where they actually can't cover this up. And then having a 5-card hand as Dory is pretty insane, or a 6-card hand if you also have an Arsenal. So this gives you just another attack in the deck that punishes them for overblocking when you have go again. It's a blue pitch. I just wanted to, after doing the math of this deck, I found that 18 blues 18 blues is like the perfect number.
Yeah.
So I just needed 1 more. I didn't want to play a 3rd Epot because not having a block card sometimes is like really unfortunate.
Even though Pursuit blocks for 2, 2 is much more than 0.
Much more than 0, that's correct. So even just having the option to like clear it from your hand, whereas you can't clear Epot from your hand, is really important. So I wanted something that blocked. I didn't want something, again, like a blue reaction. I could see putting in blue Valor here somewhere, but I actually have played this card and it's actually felt pretty good. So it's a fan favorite.
It's like a must block for them.
It is.
Like it's kind of crazy. Giving Dory an extra card in hand is kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it's essentially a blue snatch that costs 2. So
yeah, kind of. Okay, so we're gonna go on to Overpower at 1 and 2 Twinning Blade in the main.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of variations of this deck as I was prepping for like ProQuest season, playing armories. And at first, like, so Singing Steelblade can search any reaction, which is insane. So you want to have at least some amounts of like one of really like good cards.
Kind of like power cards almost.
Power cards, yeah. So I was playing one of Overpower and one of Biting Blade. So Biting Blade is a 2 for +3, and then Reprise is +1 for the turn. So it's usually a 2 for 5 that gives you 2 breakpoints. but it happens so often where I would draw it and I just didn't want it. And also, like, if you have too many reds in your hand, it's kind of bad. And 2 is expensive for a reaction. So I actually ended up just fully cutting it. This is like the one power card outside of what we have in the side deck that I always want in there, just because sometimes you'll see it early and you can just pitch it early. And then, you know, late game at any point if you need it for the win, which happens actually pretty frequently, where you're just singing, grab this, and you just win because you just did +7 out of 9.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I like this as a 1 of. Doesn't come up super often, so 1 is perfect to start it off singing. Twinning Blade, this is a card that I thought was like, at first, after crew format, getting back into Dory, I was like, maybe this is just a 1 of that you search off singing. Maybe it's a 2 of and they're both in your sideboard.
Yeah.
This card is absolutely insane. This card is so wild because it enables your triple hit turns. You can, of course, singing it for searching for Twinning Blade. And even in decks that aren't blocking you, when you do like first swing, second swing with go again, and you just twinning it, like they have a third swing coming at them, and triple swing is really insane. So this even into aggro decks is really good. It's a 3 block as well. That's another reason I wanted to play Dory, is just essentially everything blocks for 3, which is nice. This card is so good, and sometimes you have to block with one. Like one main deck might be good enough in a lot of matchups, but you don't want to not be able to singing for...
Yeah, having the extra one after you block with it definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
And then real quick, the main deck equipment, and of course Dawnblade.
Yeah.
Why are you running Dawnblade?
Oh man, it's the only option. It's really terrible. Dawnblade, some people will have other ones. It's actually the only weapon I'm running. I was running Jubil. I thought about running the one from the starter deck, the Classic Battles for Guardians, because it gets a +1 just when you attack again. So you can stack those counters.
Right.
But Dawnblade pressure is just too good, especially with like the tools that this deck has now. I think that Dawnblade is threatening into any matchup at all. This is also like super threatening into Wizards, because like they have to do something about it. They can't just be like, oh, Jubil, I'll just take it because you're just going to get a counter thing that I know how to play around. Getting a counter on this is like advantage for the rest of the game possibly.
Right.
So Dawnblade's super good, and then I typically always will play these. Depending on the matchup, I have some different stuff in the sideboard, but typically if I see a Phi, so if I see ninjas, if I see Rhinar, Bravo, Lexi, Azalea, I'm gonna run these cards. So Crown of Providence, sometimes it will happen where you like get a card in Arsenal that gets stuck. So sometimes Singing will get stuck because they're just not blocking you. Iron Song Response will get stuck. Sometimes you like draw a blue that you want to get rid of off of Supremacy. This card helps, and also like Dory used to have a problem with CNC. It's like, oh, I was about to do a 5-card hand, but then you CNC'd me, so like I have to give you 2 cards now. I have a 3-card hand. So this will just clear your arsenal and still give you a 5-card hand, and you just take 6. So this card's like pretty insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Courage is sometimes it's just a 3 block. That actually has happened in some games where like the additional block on it is worth more than getting some resources from it, because it can stop like on hit triggers, snatches. So that's happened. Card's insane when you have the triple hit turn and you just get like 2 to 3 free resources. Bracers, 3 block +1 comes up a lot. And bolters are, there's actually no matchup I don't play bolters in, which I think is probably standard.
Right.
But it's just like, the longer you can keep it up in a game, I think the better chance you have at winning.
Right, you're like threatening it the whole time.
Yeah.
They might overblock when they don't want to, or things like that.
Once you crack this, there's like way less stuff that you can do to threaten them. So when it's just like, even sometimes when it's advantageous to crack it, if I'm like ahead enough, I'm just like, why do I even want to get rid of this threat that could win me the game?
Hold it.
Just hold it, yeah. And sometimes you can actually do it even when your hand's not great, because this gives you the go again maybe that you were needing to make that hand great. So card's super strong. It's a 1 block, which is also wild. Yeah, like all 4 of these, with all of them together, you have 9 block if you block with everything. Like,
it's like your standard equipment.
So good, yeah.
And do you want to go over the sideboard real quick?
Sure.
Is that right? In this little pocket?
Yeah. So first we have some reactions. So 2 of Route. This is in the sideboard because it definitely doesn't come in against aggro. But Route is like one of the strongest things you can do to win a game. So against decks like that you know are going to block you out. So if I see a dash, I'm probably expecting them to have D-reacts and block me out. If I see like Rhinar, if I see Dromai, like this card is so strong. 2 of, again, sometimes you have to block with one and you want the second one to search off Singing. But this card has won me so many games. Like Route
it's just a game. It's a game ender.
Yeah.
It's been a game ender since it came out.
It's a 2 for 6 usually, like 6 swing, because you get rid of a 3 block and it gives +3 that they weren't expecting. So that rate when you have a blue and you can Singing it for +7 essentially is, yeah, pretty wild.
The third Twinning Blade.
Yeah, next, the third Twinning Blade. There are some matchups when Twinning Blade is more valuable than just being a triple hit. In decks that are blocking you out, when you have spoils and you swing and they're like, oh, I'll just give you my hand here, I'll give you 3 cards, you can just blow them out by having the raw Twinning Blade. So it's an insane singing target, and also just like wanting to draw in certain matchups is really good. So this will come in against decks that I think are going to block me. Now this is a card that I have a lot to say about.
It's like one of the most controversial cards in Warrior, and like it always has been.
So this card in Blitz, I feel like is always a 2-of. Dominate and damage in a format where you're only at 20 health is really insane. So getting back into the deck again, there's like certain cards that I wanted to add in, and with Glistening Steel Blades specifically, at first this card was at 0, and then I put it out as a 1-of. Like I took out a red hit and run, put it to 2, and I was like, let's try 1 ID. This card, when you can set it up with a Glistening turn, so if you can like play this from Arsenal, Glistening, Supremacy, Swing, is like an absolutely insane turn. It's 6 Dominate, Go again. If it hits, get a counter and draw a card. So this giving you often a +2 and Dominate on 2 swings is going to guarantee you that you're keeping your counters, getting counters, or that you get the triple swing. This card has overperformed. And also against decks that are going to block you out, if they don't have a D-React in Arsenal, like often this with any starter and swinging, like this Valor swing for at least 7 go, if it hits Go again, Dominate, is enough to like get 2 hits that turn. And then the second hit is going to be for 4 Dominate at least, or if you Bracers at 5 Dominate. Also, so usually this will come in as a 2-of, even against aggro, because aggro, when they see Glistening, they're like, okay, I guess I can take a turn off and block this. But when you don't even give them the option to clear your counters or block out Glistening, it's really strong. And then also, this card is, yeah, I forgot what I was going to say, but this card is super good. So, also, if I'm ever going first, so I'm either forced to go first or I want to in certain matchups, like against Dash, I'll just take in all 3 of them. Because if you somehow are able to get this with anything else, you can just guarantee usually a counter, or at least like they start at less than 40. Okay. Because they can only give you 1 card. Or you're getting armor for them.
Right.
Which
is great.
Is insane. Yeah. So this card is overperformed. I moved it from 1 to 2 to 3, and now I don't think I would ever put it down. And I think Glistening has a lot to do with that, but the card is really strong.
All right. The next card, which is another new card.
This card, I think, pushes Dory just even a little bit over the top against aggro. This card, so it comes in against aggro, that's why it's in the sideboard. It doesn't block, which is unfortunate, but the card is absolutely insane. It's essentially just Dawnblade's effect by paying 1 whenever you want to.
As an instant. So you can flash it in reactions. Another cool thing you can do is it doesn't break unless you don't hit at the end of your turn. So if you're going second and they just like attempt to move to the end of their turn, so they like try to Arsenal and pass, you can flash in an Iron Song Pride, and then you'll draw up, and then they have to deal with a Dawnblade for 4 now. Yeah. So instanting this when you're going second on their own turn is really insane. And against aggro, it just ramps you so that you can just win faster, and they're probably not going to clear it. So this card as a reaction is just like a really insane card that gives you so much value over the course of the game. And especially against decks, like I'll put this in against Icelander too. Because once you get like 1 or 2 of them out, it becomes so hard for that deck that only has 2 and 3 blocks and really only sync belows to actually get rid of this card. So kind of having like a permanent buff is really insane. So I love this card. Just think how good your Dawnblade is when it has a counter naturally. This gives it to it. Right. Yeah, for sure. Like not having to work for the counter and just giving it to it is so strong. This is a card that I could consider taking out. But there are definitely some decks like Oldham, Bravo, depending on the type of Bravo it is. Dromize, where I think they might try to fatigue me. So this will come in. This is like almost specifically Oldham, to be honest. Yeah. Because that's like typically their strategy. And this will often just recycle 3 Warriors Valor. Like that's really often what it grabs. Sometimes it'll be spoils, just depending on what's left in my deck, because Guaranteed Go Again can be good, but Valor is like the highest rate thing you can do, and so being able to recycle a Go Again card and a really good starter. It's come up a couple of times, but I mean, I could consider cutting that down for another D-React or something like that. Speaking of, we're on not Rainbow Shunts, but we're on... Pretty close. No reds, though. No reds. The math just isn't there? Yeah, I think blocking
5 often is just the same as blocking 6. Like, I think taking one from Anathos while you're doing one back is okay. This also, the math works out to, if it's a Spinal Crush with Dominate, like this from Arsenal plus a 1 block on armor, so like your boots is enough. So with the amount of armor in this deck, I don't think the reds are as necessary. The red does fully like stop a crush from Spinal, but I think it's fine to give up a 1 block on armor. And a yellow pitch is way better than a red pitch for sure. And sometimes you do have to pitch them. Blues are so that we have 21 blues against Icelander. So this comes in against Ice.
And they actually, she's a wizard, but
she does have attacks. But this will come in against her, and then I will just play all 6 against Oldhim and Bravo. So against Oldhim, you're starting him at 34, which is usually good enough. That matchup is still pretty hard, but these help. And against Bravo, it just, if they're playing aggressively, this allows you to like, once they get rid of their cripplings and spinals, you're totally like pretty fine in that matchup. So I'll often just sit on one of these, either color in Arsenal, and then if they do a non-dominated crippling or spinal, I'll just give them cards from hand.
Yeah,
keep these in Arsenal.
There.
Yeah, leave it there. Swing at them with a Naked Dawn Blade. That's fine. Leave this there. Once they try to dominate you, or you think you read a pummel coming, these will help you gain back some tempo and not take as much as you would want to. So I think people will burn these as soon as they can because they're like, oh, this is a big attack and I have a big D react. But I think holding these for the dominates is really important. And against Oldhim, just to do some damage to them, and you're playing Tunic in that matchup, which I'll get to next. So these become like a free 4 or 5 block, which is nice. I do kind of want to play reds because the Oldhim matchup does seem hard, but now without Winner's Wheel, maybe it's a little bit better and not necessary, so I'm not sure. Tunic. Yeah, card's really good. This specifically comes in against Dash, Oldhim, and Icelander. So those 3 matchups. Those are the ones I brought it in against, and it feels correct. So against Dash, we don't know what plan they're going into. I think the correct plan is Pistol Dash. And so that's going to be a longer game. So Tunic's going to get you a good amount of value. A lot of value. You're not actually, when a deck's going to block you out, the Courage, like double, triple swing turn isn't really going to happen. So you actually don't really care about that effect much and the extra 2 block on it. So Tunic in Icelander just gives you another way to play around Frostbites. Lets you AB for free. Lets you play around Crown for free when they try to use that effect, kind of whatever that thing's called. And then against Oldhim, it makes your shunts free, and sometimes having the extra resource for a reaction.
Do you hold it? Let's say you're playing against Oldhim. Is there ever a time where you could be using it for like an attack reaction, but instead you hold it because you need a shunt? Like shunt is way worse when you have to pitch a card for it, right? So much worse. Yeah. I will usually hold it especially if I have a shunt arsenal. I will definitely hold it. If I don't have one yet, I will maybe use it. It just depends how advantageous I think that reaction is at that point. Like if I think the attack react is going to get me a second swing, if they don't have an arsenal, they already use their defense react that I read, like maybe I'll use it, but I think it was almost always for shunt, And then last 3 cards in the deck. Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Null
Rune 3. So right now, against Icelander, I'm actually just running Hood, Tunic, Bracers, and Boots. So just AB1. Because in that matchup, you really do want to pressure them. They do attack you, so like the 4 block on the armor is 4 extra health. And you don't want to get to the point where AB3 actually matters anyway, which is like end of the game when they're trying to like
Snapdragon Scalers, or not Snapdragon, Stormstriders into like an Aether Ice Vein or something, like Red Aether Ice Vein.
I would rather have the advantage that like
not get to that point,
the extra health to not get to that point for free instead of having to pitch for the extra health. And then also the Bracers breakpoint can actually come up, especially in that matchup where they can't block super well. So I think that's correct. And then I just don't want to die to Kano,
so then 3 just in case you see Kano.
If I see Kano, AB3 and then Bolters.
Is there a world where you AB2 against like a Briar, or are you just going to race Briar?
Just going to race Briar, Okay. I don't think you want to pitch on their turn anyways. If you're going to give them cards, you just want to give a 3 block, I'm pretty certain. And I'd rather have the physical block to stop the breakpoints of stuff like Snatch. So against Briar, I actually don't think I would play any Null Rune. Just take whatever Arcane they give me and just race them like an aggro deck.
All right. Well, congrats on your win. And I guess we'll see you in Baltimore, huh?
Yeah, you will. See you there.
All right. Thanks, Nick.